think I have some idea about what goes into this kind of decision in a congregation, because in March of 1982, Southside Presbyterian Church in Tucson declared sanctuary for refugees from Central America who were facing deportation to death squads and torture and massacres of villages in El Salvador and Guatemala, and all of the risk to life and family that moment entailed. And it was a different issue in those days than the current issue that you are acting upon. But it was the same fundamental principle for faith communities, because basic human rights were being violated by government in systematic ways. And every other possibility had been exhausted to save the lives of those persons, to save those families from devastation. And so the church in Tucson, Arizona, remembered that God had given the communities of faith an ancient gift called sanctuary. That the church was given that gift by God to save lives, to keep families intact, to say to the government, you have absolutely failed in your responsibility to do justice. And therefore, that failure means that the community of faith has been given a gift by God to stand up and in nonviolent, direct ways say no to more deportations, no to more devastation of families, to no to a government that has absolutely and tragically failed in its responsibilities, so other institutions within society must act.
Said he would not be in the business of tearing families apart. And so then I asked, why is our government deporting more than 1,000 people every day? Many of them fathers and mothers. It is exactly what is happening here in the case of Luis Lopez Acabal. For many in my faith community, this is not just a political action or about elections. It is about a husband and a father who came here as a teenager himself to escape gangs and violence most of us could hardly imagine. The lives of real people like Luis, with real families, are hanging in the balance. This cannot wait until after an election. This must happen now. Let Luis stay, please.
Pues en esta iglesia pues yo me siento más feliz porque estaba en una casa y pues me sentía como tenía miedo que ahí llegaba y por eso decidí venir a esta iglesia y porque no me quiero separar de la familia y por eso y de los niños y pues decidí venir a esta iglesia y no me voy a ir hasta que el ICE me responda una respuesta.
President Obama has said that he does not think the government should be in the business of tearing families apart, and yet that is exactly what we're doing under his watch, with his policies, with his militarization of our border. We are setting up guns and cannons against mothers and fathers and children. It's ridiculous. We're one of the few countries in this world that do that. And we are telling people who are fleeing violence that most of us could not imagine. And we're telling them, no, you can't come here. And it's just morally wrong. And we're tearing families apart. People who've been here for years, like Luis, who's been here for 7 years. He came as a teenager, an unaccompanied teenager, made a life, got married, is the father of 2 children, and is caring for them and helping to care for them and provide for his family. And we're telling him, nope, sorry, you need to go back to that country where you could be killed.
Luis es una persona muy amorosa, es un buen padre, es una persona que tiene un pensamiento muy bueno en cuanto a la familia. Él es un buen ciudadano y un muy buen esposo.
No tengo miedo, pues yo sé que aquí en esta iglesia y tengo fe que Dios va a resolver todo este caso. Y le tengo mucha fe y por eso me vine aquí para no separarme de la familia, no estar lejos. Yo sé que los niños me necesitan.
This is exactly what the prophets were calling the people of Israel to do, to offer sanctuary, to offer refuge for people after a very long journey oftentimes, especially here in the United States, here in Arizona. And so Jesus took that teaching and expanded it and said, not only are we to welcome them, but we're to love them, to love our neighbor, whoever they are, whether they have come from a foreign land or we've known them all our lives, to love our enemies. And so this congregation, I think, has faithfully stepped up. We are not a unanimous congregation. We are not all of like mind on this, but we all do believe in the teaching to love our neighbor and to welcome the stranger among us, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yo no podría ir a Guatemala porque es un lugar donde yo no conozco. Aparte de que si él se vino por la violencia, ¿cómo yo podría llevar a mis hijos a un lugar donde hay violencia? Si uno quiere protegerlos, uno quiere buscar su bien de ellos.
We are trying to abide by God's law, especially when the laws of this country are so unjust and so wrong and so broken and filled with fear of the other, the one that we don't know or we don't think we know. But really it's the one that's living right next door to us.
What we hold in common as people of faith is no more devastation of families, no more mothers being deported, no more fathers being deported, no more children being seen as a problem. They are refugees from decades of war and invasion by the United States and CIA operations and death squads and torture, and now a whole decades-long history of a failed drug war that is devastating entire communities and cities and nations, and particularly the children of Central America. And they need our love and our care and our protection. And what you are doing here in Phoenix is being the prophets for a movement that is inevitable.